He knows how to give you the right boundaries and the right rules to get you to where you want to be. And especially in the sexual area, you can't freewheel. You just can't expect to show up and be strong. I'm not that strong. I got to have some boundaries. I got to have some rules in advance that says you can be here and you cannot be here. You can be alone in this context, but you can't be alone in that context. You can let your eyes go to that stuff and not go to that stuff. And that's all laid out in advance so that when I get into the moment, I have the convictions prior to the temptation, which helps me succeed against the temptation. If you don't have convictions in advance and boundaries prior to the temptation, you get into the temptation and then you fail in the temptation. Because what's inside of you, there's nothing inside of you to come out and help you meet the demand of that reality and win. So we need boundaries. Where do we need boundaries? Next fill-in. First, in the sexual area, sexual boundaries are required for all domains of living. And I put some examples down there. Mentally, I need to know where I will and won't go with my mind in advance. Visually, I need to know where I will and won't go with my eyes in advance. I need to know what I will watch and what I won't watch. And let me just give you a personal example of how to live out a boundary in your daily life. I have a 12-year-old son. We love football. We watch football. You watch football, you see the Silver Bullet commercials. You see the Silver Bullet commercials, you see girls in bikinis dancing in the snow, go figure. So we're watching football, Silver Bullet commercial, girls in bikinis dancing in the snow. Slick says, look. Holy Spirit says, don't look. So I look at Ryan, and I said, hey, dude, how's it going? How you doing? What's happening? And he looks at me, and he goes, Dad, what are you doing? And I looked at him, and I said, okay, Ryan, there's stuff on the TV that it's not appropriate for Daddy to just kind of look at. So will you just help me not look at it? Sure. So by that time, the commercial's over. Fast forward 2 weeks later. I'm upstairs. Kara, who's also a rabid football junkie, is down watching football with Ryan. I hear the Silver Bullet commercial come on. And then I hear Ryan go, hey, Kara, how's it going? What's happening? What are you doing? What's going on? How's it hanging? Fathers with daughters, you want your daughter to marry my son. Because he is trained how to honor a woman that he is committed to. And he doesn't let his eyes and his mind go dwell and feed on the Twinkies of a Silver Bullet commercial and bleed out the intimacy that's supposed to go toward his wife. But that's how you live out a boundary. Now, what did that do? Okay, next fill-ins. That good kind of sexual boundary that I had set up in advance, I had told myself, you know what, there are things I can let my eyes dwell on, and there are things I can't. First thing it did is it makes my struggle real. A lot of guys just don't acknowledge the reality of the struggle. They kind of pretend it's out there. It's for someone else. It's for the weaker men, who have to have these boundaries. I'm not such a bad guy. Well, you know what Jesus would say to the guys? He said, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery. That's the visible external act. But I say to you, if you lust after a woman in your mind, it's the same as doing it with her. So he would always dig down underneath and go to the root cause of where sin really starts and in the mind, and he would shake down everybody. He would say, you've heard it said, but I say to you. And in the whole sexual area, man, did he dress down the guys in Matthew 5:28. All the guys must have been shaking in their pants. How does he know? So a good boundary there will make my struggle real. Second, it starves the wrong desires. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're single or you're married. If you're single and your desires are dominated by your passion and lust, that's not making you a better guy. So you got to get busy with this too. Because like I said, when you get married, the ring doesn't change who you are and how you mentally operate. And if you're married, you want the right desires going toward your wife. If you're single, you're saving those desires and you're going to pour them all out when you do find that woman. The third thing it does is it removes pressure by removing me from tempting situations. You see, in my life, I used to just show up and expect to be strong. But now with just a few rules, I know where I'm going to be and where I'm not going to be, and man, that just alleviates the pressure altogether. You know, I know that if Girls Gone Wild comes off, my conviction already is I'm turning off TV. I know guys who, when they go on business trips, they will, on the pay-per-view box, I know one guy, he's here today as a matter of fact, who installs as the code to access the pay-per-view his wedding day so that he can't go south when he's on the road. I know other guys who tape pictures of their families on the TV when they're on the road. But what does that do? It removes pressure by removing him from that circumstance. And so what does that mean for you today in terms of building boundaries to move a problem, to getting free from the problem? You have to recognize, first of all, your pattern of temptation and be prepared for it, okay? When do you go south? When do you get loose in a corner? You know, when do you fall? When do you make a very common mistake, you know, in your attitude or actions? Second, you got to ask yourself, when does it happen? Where am I? Who am I with? How do I feel? There's an old recovery principle called HALT, H-A-L-T. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Okay, when you're hungry, you're more vulnerable emotionally. When you're angry, you're more vulnerable to do stupid things. When you're lonely, you're more vulnerable to doing stupid things. And when you're tired, you're more vulnerable to doing stupid things. We all know that with our kids. And the big headline here on this whole issue of boundaries is wise planning reduces failure. Wise planning reduces temptation. It's the old Patton thing. Never let the enemy pick the battlefield. And you see, the mistake that a lot of guys make is that we let the enemy pick the battlefield. We just walk right into the battlefield. We don't like Patton go, no, if we're here, then he's going to get that angle, shoot, die. No, we're not going to go there. And it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, be the Amish, okay? You just got to have rules. You know, how does this work out? Okay, the team travels to Vegas to go to a convention, okay? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Yeah, man. So you already know in advance, hey, if the team decides to go to, you know, the strip club, I'm going to the gym. You know, if after the convention's over, say, hey, you know what, I already got it planned in the schedule, I'm going to the gym. Have fun, guys. You see how that takes the pressure off? You know, rather than getting into the situation, you go, so, Gary, want to go to the strip club? Gary doesn't have the plan in advance. He goes, well, yeah, well, you know, and pressure, you know. But having a boundary, having a rule, that removes the pressure. You're not going to go there. You can't play the game if you're not showing up. That's the idea. Benjamin Needler, a famous Puritan preacher, said this: we must not part with sin as with a friend, with a purpose to see him again, and have that same familiarity as we did before. We must shake our hands of it as Paul did the viper off his hand and into the fire. You know, temptation usually comes through a door that is deliberately left open.